Alright, let's watch this video. This is this was unironically rage baiting me, and it was successful, so now we're gonna watch it and see what they actually have to say. I thought they were like rage baiting and unironically saying that VTubers are friggin' political somehow. Manic Pixie Dream Girls, how VTubers accidentally debunked woke ideologues by Mentis Waves. Let's do it. Let's watch it. 3, 2, 1, boom. When one gender is mistreated, the other ends up becoming disenfranchised as well. Okay.
Hey, internets. One of the more bizarre questions out there is something I like to refer to as the VTuber question. Are VTubers cringe and degenerate?
Yes.
Or are they fine examples of just pure, harmless, youthful fun? The answer to which is all pretty subjective and something you can argue either way. But what's more interesting is a question that often comes packed with the VTuber question.
I don't think it's subjective. I think it's what you go out looking for it. If you complain about degenerate, quote-unquote, lewdtubers or whatever that clearly have an agenda of selling you their, their sex appeal, that's fine, but don't complain, like, for example, in their chat, be like, oh my god, this girl is such a hoe, like, I think that's cringe. You're being cringe. You're being even more cringe than the cringe that you think you are looking at.
Which is, are VTubers political? And that question often gets swept under the rug with usually the milquetoast answer, which is that, oh, it just depends on the VTuber. Some VTubers like Kirsch focus on politics a lot, then you have others like Pippa who are occasionally political, and then you have fun little moments like this one.
What do you think of men who get cooked?
I think that's really sad. They should beat their wives.
That's such a good clip.
Peachy, isn't it? But honestly, most of them tend to avoid the subject of politics entirely, unless it's in the context of a joke. Like, for example, Iron Mouse reacting to AI of Donald Trump and Joe Biden playing video games, which is political, but obviously just satire, which is honestly a smart position for most VTubers to take. Treat politics as something to laugh at, instead of taking a serious stance, so that way they don't alienate half their audience. And so that's the answer you're gonna usually get when you ask the question of, are VTubers political? But that's not where I'm taking this.
And again, it's the content that you're looking at. If Iron Mouse reacted to the debates or something, I'm sure people would get pissed, even if she laughed at them. It really depends on the context.
There's a much more interesting way to answer this question, which is to interpret it as, are VTubers inherently political? Is there something about VTubers that has inadvertently proven something about modern culture through their rise and success that most people wouldn't even notice or even think about? That perhaps there's an experiment that all VTubers have been participating in whether they know it or not, which handedly disproves a major mainstream media narrative. Intentional logical fallacies are used by various media pundits all the time, which is why I am partnered with Ground different media sources to report the same story in ways that makes it look like the exact opposite of what's going on is true. And Ground News helps you see through this bias by compiling thousands of articles and organizing them by their bias.
I have a bias for VTubers.
Designed mainly to save you time in comparison to if you were to try and do this by yourself. For example, there are many articles going around this month on what's going to happen to Donald Trump's legal troubles and criminal charges since he became president-elect last month. Kind of puts a whole damper on the whole thing, doesn't it? And Ground News provides a lot of features to help you easily sort through these articles and see through the bias. First off, it gives a nice summary of the issue. Prosecutors don't want judges to toss out Trump's criminal conviction, but recognize that keeping it going would be difficult since he's now president-elect. So they are instead trying to stall the case. It also gives a summary of different sources reporting on the topic. Right-leaning sources seem to suggest that prosecutors are obsessed, going too far, the whole thing is lawfare. Center sources simply state the DA wants to pause the case, but I've just read it on Twitter until he leaves office. And left sources like MSNBC reported as if bad orange man is using his election win to evade justice. If you were to ask me, the whole thing is dumb since it was a victimless crime anyways. But Ground News can help you come to your own conclusion. Let's easily see which sources are reporting and how. My conclusion is that I'm always right, chat. Or with things like this that let you see who owns the media sources reporting on the topic. You can also click on a source to be taken directly to their version of the article, or find similar articles quickly and easily via the similar news topics feature. There's also Blind Spot, which lets you see at a glance topics that are being ignored or underreported by various media sources based on how far to the left or right they lean, which lets you see things that you might ordinarily miss due to the reporting bias. Lastly, Ground News is independent and subscriber funded, so to get the same features I have, you can go to ground.news/mentiswave or scan my QR code to now get 50% off the Vantage plan, which gets you unlimited access. But anyways, the answer to that question, have VTubers accidentally proven something about our culture that mass media doesn't really want to talk about, is in fact a very large yes. And it's something that starts to reveal itself when you start to examine the phrase Manic Pixie Dream Girl. A fantastic example of how modern cultural critique is filled with a lot of really dumb ideas that are both largely misandrous towards men, but interestingly, in this particular case, it's also something that has a side effect of being severely damaging to young women, in that it preaches to young ladies a false narrative that, when taken seriously, will result in them making a series of really bad and dumb decisions that will ultimately ruin her life and destroy any romantic prospects she may have. And VTubers have just kind of accidentally proven just how stupid this concept is. So what exactly is a Manic Pixie Dream Girl?
That's pretty good, actually.
I'm sure some people who clicked on this video already have a basic concept of it, but for those who don't know, Manic Pixie Dream Girl is a trope, a character archetype of something commonly found in fiction, although can occasionally exist outside of it. And the character usually has the
500 Days of Summer. Oh, okay, I understand. Zoe Deschanel, for some godforsaken reason, is that archetype that they put into the... Yes, okay, I understand.
Following traits. The first is that they are eccentric or has a quirky personality, you know, not like the other girls type. They're also young.
Indie filmmaker actors that happen to be females love this trope. I don't know why.
Female and
oh my god, I'm some random
and so in fiction,
XD?
she will usually be the romantic interest or the hero of the story.
Yeah.
She also often has interests and hobbies that are less common for women of her age.
Oh my god.
She's usually optimistic and positive about life.
Yo, why are you chewing on a lollipop?
So this rule can be broken if it's in line with her eccentric nature. And lastly, she usually ends up teaching the hero of the story something about life. She either helps him get on his feet, provides him with some kind of motivation, or again, just serves as the basic love interest of the
Or in 500 Days of Summer, he realizes that she's a piece of shit, and then he just goes and moves on to the next chick. It's kind of like a counterexample. I don't know if some people have seen that movie. It was kind of like, it's alright, but at the end, it's not about her teaching him. It's more like he realizes, like, yeah, she's a dumb bitch.
story. So basically, she's quirky, she's positive, she's fun, she's different. And she's also, strangely enough, an archetype that you could easily apply to, well, pretty much every single successful VTuber. So I actually found that it was harder to find a VTuber that doesn't fit under the Manic Pixie Dream Girl label. The vast majority of the VTubing industry can be understood as young girls, usually with a fun and upbeat disposition, using an anime model instead of just being a cam girl, and they usually have some kind of eccentric or unique backstory to their character. There's some men out there who are VTubers, but mostly it's young women, usually women under the age of 35. And what VTubers mostly do is provide entertainment in a manner that is mostly pandering to a male audience. So they'll do things like streaming video games or reacting to internet memes while being quirky and fun. The only real difference here is, again, they're not entirely fictional. There is a real person behind the model, but at the same time, they're still somewhat playing a character. I mean, most of them break character all the time and only occasionally play within their role. In many ways, VTubers are just female streamers using an anime character. But the point is, the successful ones, nearly all fall under the Manic Pixie Dream Girl archetype, which is very, very interesting. Because the thing about the Manic Pixie Dream Girl is that it's also an archetype that is very deeply hated by the sort of neo-Marxist woke progressive types. And they of course use the usual prog snarl words. It's problematic, or it's sexist, or that it's harmful in some way. Because, you know, it hurt their subjective feelings, so they're...
I don't think it's about politics, because there are so many people that hate girls just in a general blanket sense, and then them just happening to be female and they're successful in some capacity. That's what they hate. I wouldn't say that this isn't entirely true, like a lie, or it's not entirely truthful, but I think it's mostly like jealousy. Yeah, it's not exactly like, oh, it's problematic, it's harmful, oh, you're a Marxist, oh, you must hate VTubers. I think there's a lot of people that are right-leaning that hate VTubers too. Don't get it twisted.
Therefore, it's harmful. Their logic is flawless. Don't question.
They say that anime's for peds. Yeah.
Don't think about it. Just accept it. And they've been talking about this for much longer than VTubers have been a thing, and so VTubers aren't really their go-to.
No way. Oh no, feminist frequency. The Gamercade.
Example. Instead, they complain about characters usually in mainstream movies like Summer from, Days of Summer, or Sam from Garden State, or Ruby from Ruby
Classic.
Sparks. And their complaints about it are as follows. The first is that the Manic Pixie Dream Girl only exists to help the male hero out of depression, and that she is therefore just a tool to be used to this end. The second complaint is that she has no life of her own, and often her family has no part in her depiction. Also, she has no will of her own, and just goes along with whatever men want her to do.
That's true. Yeah, they never have, like, families involved in those movies. Yeah, they just kind of live by themselves, like, oh, my parents are divorcees, and, I just kind of live my own life. Want to hook up,
Which is then used to imply that she's failing to pursue her own happiness, and that she's helping men grow while experiencing no growth herself. And that the Manic Pixie Dream Girl is just in general unrealistic. Overall, the main complaint here seems to be just woke progressive feminists preaching that women are not objects that exist to help men or inspire them or make men happy or whatever. And that the Manic Pixie Dream Girl archetype somehow implies that they are.
But Shondo's a very good VTuber. She's a very good VTuber in the sense that she always uplifts her audience and people know that she's still a VTuber, but she still tries to make people better themselves and make them happy. Even if she's trying to also get through life herself. Tenma does not exactly in the same way, but Tenma, she likes big buff men and makes content out of it. Her audience unironically works out to try and get pictures sent to her for content for YouTube. So she can make like videos out of it and be like, oh, you're buff, you're looking big, chat, you're looking massive. Yeah, really, yeah, that's why I like Tenma a lot. She's really funny in that way.
Now, like all midwit takes, there is a base level of truth in these people whining about Manic Pixie
It's making the people healthy.
Because unrealistic characters to serve as romantic interest absolutely do exist, and they can get pretty darn cringe. For example, a common trope you might see in romance novels written for women is an alpha male Giga Chad with supernatural powers, making interest in...
Oh my god, what are these? The Goblin King! The Way You Love Me. Oh my god. What are these, man? Fierce in Fur. Oh, this is a furry one? That's strong.
A totally ordinary, normal, boring girl for basically no reason. And he then proceeds to take care of her and protect her throughout the story for, again, basically no reason. Twilight is...
Well, yeah, it's a self-insert. That's ultimately what those books are, and Twilight is also a self-insert.
Is usually given as the basic
That's what women want.
But it happens a lot. And on the flip side, you can also find unrealistic female characters in things like Japanese harem anime, where an extremely boring male character with no personality, so to speak, that always looks like Shinji for some reason, gets his pick of a slew of extremely attractive female characters who all have the hots for him for basically no reason whatsoever.
It's almost like writing fantasy and over-exaggerated fantasy does suit an audience because it helps them escape their problems. Like, people always bully and say, oh, it's for 30 to 40-year-old women reading these books, but then at the same time, they watch Menhara hentai of them porking like 15 girls, and the guy just keeps going on forever and ever. It's like, dude, you're doing the same thing. It's just different sides of the same coin, man. Yeah, I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I don't. We can laugh, sure. I can laugh at both, but it's not really anything inherently wrong with it. As long as you realize that it's a fantasy and not reality, you're not gonna find 5 women to pork and, marry, okay?
He just kind of exists, and suddenly all these girls who have been designed to have absolutely no unattractive traits in them whatsoever suddenly all want him. And it's true that these tropes can be bad, however, they're not exactly sexist and harmful, at least not to the gender they represent. Rather, they're usually harmful more so to the people reading them. The problem with these kind of characters is that they're wish fulfillment characters. They give young readers an extremely unrealistic expectation for the opposite sex, which can absolutely lead to people becoming cold and alone. I mean, there's a reason why harem anime is often laughed at as a genre of anime that is mainly for virgins, because...
But you can say that about porn or the white women that read books about porking muscly men and being protected. I think it's all up to the viewer or the enjoyer or the book reader to realize that it's a fantasy, and you're not going to find someone like that in real life. You might find certain aspects of, say, I don't know, maybe he's like, not like a 8-pack, 6'10" fucking muscly guy, but he has aspects from a book that you read a long time ago that you enjoyed. The Minhara thing is a bit of an extreme because, like, I don't think anybody really has, like, 5 girls that they pork, but still.
It kinda is, to be honest. A really basic red pill advice for young men is that you can't just sit around and wait for some 10 out of 10 pure-hearted female with absolutely no flaws about her whatsoever to just magically take an interest in you and do all the work and just want you for no reason. That just doesn't happen. Rather, what happens most of the time is that you end up with the partner you earned. So in reality, you have to become the kind of man that the kind of woman you want finds attractive. And of course, the same thing is true in reverse. If a woman is not attractive to the kind of man that she finds attractive, she's not going to get that man. There are exceptions to this basic rule, but most of the time you can't just do nothing and have your perfect dream partner fall into your life. You have to actually do something. And
that's why there's such a massive skew in society now where women expect this, and because women are the people that usually pick in relationships, that's why men are disillusioned. I don't know if you'll address this. Obviously, I didn't pre-watch this, but the problem right now is that there's a lot of 4s and 3s that are women that want like 6, 7s, and 8s without putting in the work of, like, I don't know. I don't want to say like, oh, you have to start working out instantly and like get a fucking massive hot bod or something, but there's like steps to it. There's degrees. Maybe you learn how to cook. Maybe you impress them with your intelligence. Maybe you have a lot in common. You watch a lot of the same shows or the same movies. Like it's a bunch of different factors that all add up.
In many ways, it's very similar to economics. You have to offer people something that they want in order to get what you want. There's another channel known as Home Math that kind of goes into this extensively when talking about relationships.
Actually, not. I swear, not pre-watched. Actually, swear to God. Hand on my grandma's grave.
Advice. A big problem with the dating market is that too many people are going into it only thinking about what they can get out of it, rather than going into it thinking about what they have to give, or what exactly is it about you that makes you a good partner. And I have a special understanding of this because one thing people might not know about me is that I'm actually a married man. I normally would never bring this up. I normally don't really talk about myself much because it doesn't really matter in the context of philosophical or political channel. But it is relevant because I can point out one very simple fact about a lasting marriage, which is that you have to care about what your partner wants. You have to care about their well-being. In order for love to work and for it to last, you have to wake up every day thinking about what you have to give, rather than just what you can get out of your partner. If I didn't care about my wife's well-being, or if she didn't care about my well-being, it wouldn't work. You both have to genuinely respect each other's will, almost as if it were your own. And so that is just kind of the basic nugget of truth that exists within this critique of the Manic Pixie Dream Girl archetype that we're seeing from these neo-Marxist woke progressive feminist types. The problem is, and where they completely screw up and get it all completely backwards, is that what they're whining about isn't actually unrealistic at all. I decided to watch some of the movies and look at some of the characters that are often called out as being Manic Pixie Dream Girls, and the only consistency I found is that they were women, they had some femininity and some quirkiness to their personality, they liked to have fun, and they didn't hate men. So,
I don't know why, but those movies always made me feel like a modicum uncomfortable. I don't know what it was. It wasn't like the acting or like the story. It just, something felt really off to me. I watched 500 Days of Summer like 3 times, and every time I just couldn't really put my finger on it. I'm like, man, like it's always like I know that he's gonna get his heart dumped, and like she's like, it's too fake. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what it is. It's probably just me overthinking it. Yeah, 3 times. I know. Like since 2009, I have. Just because, like, I just didn't get it.
Hey, woman out watching this, if you meet these 4 traits, congratulations, you apparently don't exist. So what we are seeing here is kind of the reverse problem. Rather than setting an unrealistically high bar for a potential partner, what we're really seeing here is an example of feminist critique going too far. They're setting an unrealistically low bar for women to go for. Or if you are anything other than a man-hating, scowling, strong woman who don't need no man, then you somehow represent a problematic, unrealistic standard. And that's of course completely ridiculous. It kind of reminds me of the male incel community complaining about how women aren't interested in men who are poor, stupid, and short. Or otherwise...
The problem is that you're not even trying. I had a friend from work who lived like with her boyfriend for like 4 years, like basically in almost poverty. I knew her pretty well. And they eventually got married and they dug themselves out of poverty. Like, the guy wasn't like a 10 out of 10, but he went to work every day to provide. She went to work too. She worked part-time, but that's not the point. But was he tall? Like, I mean, like, tall as in, like, what, 5'10", 6? He was like a 10 out of 10 guy, but he went to work every day and he brought home the dough and it was fine. She never complained about it. And that's what I think is weird. It's like, oh, you have to have a fucking rippling 8-pack and you have to have $1 million gazillion dollars. What, they were like, what, 22 when they got together? And they lived together for 5 years and they didn't break up? I don't know. I admired it to an extent. Like, I was like, damn, like, that's a long time to be working through life together as a team rather than being like, fuck, this guy's just not putting in the work. Like, he's working all the time, but he just won't fucking get an 8-pack. Like, cringe, man. Like, chill the fuck out. It's not about, like, having fucking 8-pack or having fucking massive fucking legs.
Lack any masculinity in them whatsoever. Just because standards exist doesn't mean you're being oppressed. And look, I get it. It can be really hard.
And also, some people's standards can be different.
To meet some of those standards, especially as a guy, because some of those standards are indeed a lot higher. But whining about it doesn't really change the fact that that bar exists. And going back to VTubers and examining them alongside the movies that get accused of having manic pixie dream girls in them, we can easily see how this bar isn't really that unrealistic at all. And a lot of the critique also has some really obviously faulty logic when you think about it, which really shouldn't surprise anybody, because one of the main central components of neo-Marxist philosophy is that they tend to view everything through the false dichotomy of victims and oppressors, when in reality social interaction is much more complicated than that.
Sorry, chat, I have literally no idea. I can't even comment on this. I don't even know what neo-Marxism is.
And as a result of this, they tend to commit false dichotomy fallacies and make bad faith arguments all the time. For example, one really stupid and very common false dichotomy is objectification. For example, attractive female characters in a story exist, or lots of YouTubers like to use sexy models. And therefore, men who enjoy that are objectifying them. They only view her as an object. But
what if you were the one that commissioned the model to have big boobs? What if you can literally break down this argument in 2 seconds and say, so what if a girl has big tits and she walks outside, does that mean she's objectifying herself? Like, how does that make any form of sense? Yeah, I don't get it. Sorry, you're stupid.
That's actually a false dichotomy. It is entirely possible, in fact very common, for a man to find a woman sexy and attractive and still respect her as a human being with human rights. Just because sex sells doesn't mean that men only view women as sex objects. You can absolutely find a woman sexy and still respect her. And yet whenever I see these radical feminist neo-Marxist critiques of art and literature and whatnot, they just automatically assume that any attractive female character is being objectified, which is objectively invalid reasoning. Those two scales are not tied together. Men's brains do not work in a way where the more attractive we see a woman, we then automatically have to see her as less of a human being. The personality
well, that is thrown out the window. There's plenty of beauty of women being depicted in all sorts of art forms, like even in ones that are of religious depictions. Like, you can just throw that out the window. Like, from what, 400 years ago, they were drawing women in beautiful clothing. Like, maybe not, like, completely naked, but you could see the female form, and it's still beautiful.
Scale and the look scale are entirely capable of going up and down independently of each other. And yet, because neo-Marxist philosophy tends to view the evil, straight, white male as the oppressor group, it is automatically always taken in bad faith. And so it is assumed that the evil, straight, white male must therefore be objectifying any woman who is found to be attractive.
That's right, Trent. You're objectifying me by watching stream.
And that's objectively not true. It's a false dichotomy fallacy. It's not a sustainable argument. And as I've just shown you, it falls apart very...
Why is that Jesus? Why are you showing nippies?
It's not a sustainable argument.
Chat, like, come on, man. Why are we objectifying Jesus? He's looking mighty fine over here. Why not? I'm just saying, chat. I'm just saying, Jesus could get it. That's right, chat.
And as I've
That's
just
right.
shown you, it falls apart very easily when examined. And here's the thing, the same thing is true for pretty much all the other complaints about the Manic Pixie Dream Girl. For example, going back to VTubers, there are a lot of young, depressed men in the Western society. That's just an unfortunate reality. And for many of them,
Oh, I think it's everywhere, not just Western society as well.
watching VTubers helps them out of that depression. Does that mean they see the VTuber as just a tool to bring him out of depression? Just an object with no will of her own? Just a means to an end of that goal? No, of course not. That's ridiculous. That is just another false dichotomy. For the exact same reason, just because someone helped you out of depression doesn't mean you view them as a tool with no human agency of their own. That's ridiculous.
I watched VTubers when I was really, really sad during COVID, okay? Like, during the period where I was laid off. I know I'm not a dude and I can't liken it because I'm not attracted to the same sex. But that doesn't mean I objectify them. I might laugh and find them, like, sexy or cute, but I don't want to fuck them. I'm sure there's plenty of people who have the same kind of mentality. They might appreciate their form or their just general, like, vibes, and the physical is, like, a secondary thing.
And going
It's
back
not
to
that
mainstream
deep,
movies,
man.
we then have to ask, so why is it that Sam in Garden State is therefore just an automatic objectified tool for helping Andrew out of depression? Why does that need to imply that she has no agency of her own? It really doesn't make any sense as soon as you realize that it's just all false dichotomy. And she's also not a perfect girl at all. She's not unrealistic. She has problems of her own. If you actually watch the movie, Sam has some pretty serious issues. Or how about the idea that the Manic Pixie Dream Girl has no life of her own? I mean, where's that even coming from? So because a girl doesn't open up about who she is and give us a massive backstory about everything in her life, then she has no life of her own? I mean, plenty of streamers, not just VTubers, and plenty of content creators don't talk about their life that much outside.
And then there are streamers that do and people shit on them. Sometimes rightfully so, because nobody forced you to share anything about you, and then when you share it, you get shit on because they realize that they realize that maybe their dream girl isn't actually their dream girl because they open their mouth too much. Yeah, I don't know. It goes both ways.
Of what content they make. That doesn't imply that we have no life, and it certainly doesn't mean that you're only allowed to look at them as someone who has no life. Again, another stupid, bad faith false dichotomy, where the evil, straight white male is assumed to be a villain who only views others as a means to an end. And then the weirdest critique of the Manic Pixie Dream Girl has to be failing to pursue her own happiness, because that's a case where it can be entirely reciprocal. Lots of people have fun making other people happy. That makes them happy. Having fun and being entertaining for others can be a mutually beneficial act, like with Summer in 500 Days of Summer. And all the silly antics that she's pulling, her character...
A side note, I will never understand people that say things like, oh, chibi doki, she's inherently sexual. The girl streams video games and screams. If you find that sexually attractive, I don't know, man. Go date a coyote. No offense, I love chibi. It's just funny. Like, I don't understand the mentality. And again, that's what it boils down to. They see chibi being successful and they're like, fuck, why didn't I think of that? Why can't I do that? And that's where the hatred comes from, I think, personally. That's what I think.
Seems to be having just as much fun. In fact, in many cases, she seemed to have more fun than the male main character. And with VTubers, most of those girls stream for hours on end, and you can tell that they're genuinely enjoying it and having fun with their audience. Which then kind of brings you to another problem with neo-Marxist woke progressive thought.
No, they only enjoy it because people give them money and shit, and that's why they enjoy themselves. Okay, ding dong. How about you get a voice changer, start up a stream? You're a man, you're probably funnier than like 99% of all VTubers streaming anywhere on any platform at any given time. Why don't you just do it? I started out streaming to 5 people. I had no one like gifting me subs and like doing all this shit. Nobody was doing it. We were just there hanging out. Like, what are we really talking about here? And again, that's where you just break down that argument and then they're like, oh, I just fucking hate her. She's successful now. She doesn't deserve it. Like, Chibi's fucking hilarious. She's so funny.
which is that they tend to have a very bizarre zero-sum mentality towards the world. They tend to think that one person's gain is another person's loss. One class is the victim, the other class is the oppressor. All again stemming from false dichotomies. And what ends up happening as a result of this is that the sort of radical neo-Marxist feminist types end up shaming any woman who doesn't hate men, which is probably why I see the word pick-misha often being thrown at VTubers.
This is true. I've been called a pick-me, and then I found out what a pick-me is, chat. Yeah, I didn't even know what a pick-me was until recently.
Now, on the surface of the word, pick-misha is defined as a woman who devalues herself in order to get picked by men, or a woman who is constantly seeking validation from men. But the problem...
But there's plenty of male comedians that put themselves down as men, or making jokes about, like, I don't know, sex jokes? Like, what? Yeah, self-deprecation is a form of comedy. Like, why is that a bad thing when a girl does it?
Is the word in practice generally gets used against any lady who happens to get along with men just fine, or just does something that the neo-Marxists don't like. For example, apparently Dipper Dog is a pick-me because she reacted to a video of men doing...
Wait! Oh my god, it's Umbra! It's Excalibur, the schizo! The insane guy! And Dipper Dog reacted to the man versus woman survival video. Oh my god, my man! That's right, this is an old screenshot, because before his Reddit got nuked.
Better than women at hunting, so she had fun laughing at one of the basic biological differences between male and female in humans. Apparently this is pick-me behavior. Or how about another example? Apparently Smug Alea is a pick-me for making fun of game journos over the whole Black Myth Wukong fiasco. Okay, so sometimes VTubers make fun of Woketoids too, and that somehow makes
is this
them
4chan?
pick-me's. Gee, it's almost like pick-me isn't really a word that's used with any kind of consistency in regards to what it's supposed to be defined as.
No, it's like the word grifter. It is very much an overused word just to sling at people. That means absolutely nothing. Yeah.
It's almost like it's just being used as shaming language against any woman who steps out of line and goes against the cult of woke. And
wait, hold on, go back. Yeah, give me more anti-woke pandering. Tell me DI is lay bad for the 100th time. While you wave your white horde... I think you mean white-haired, Mr. Frothing in the mouth and drooling on the keyboard. Fox tits in front of my face and checked that MGTOW, I don't know what that means, react slop right into my nutsack. Fuck yeah. Chad, is this what you like? Hating and gooning? Dude, this is actually hating and gooning and hating. Men going their own way? What does that mean? What? No, okay, hold on. I'm actually being serious. What does that even mean? Men going their own way react slob. What? That's a thing? Yeah, anything but taking accountability for being a fucking retard on the internet, schizo posting about a VTuber that just makes content. Just don't watch it if you don't like it, you freak. It's called Don't Recommend Me this channel.
And the more you look into it, that seems to be exactly what's going on. Like another silly example, apparently every single VTuber who played Hogwarts Legacy, from Pikami...
Oh my god, this stream was legendary. Granted, it was breaking for most of the time, like, she couldn't launch the game half the time, but still. Spending $60 and playing something you dislike to own the libs! It's actually quite the enjoyable game, by the way. I played through it, the whole thing.
Pipkin Pippa is a pick-me girl for playing Hogwarts Legacy. Which is weird, because Hogwarts Legacy wasn't even really that anti-woke. It's just that the neo-Marxists have decided that for some reason...
It wasn't anti-woke at all. There was a trans character in there. It was just a game about wizards and witches. Hogwarts, you know, Harry Potter. Yeah.
J.K. Rowling is literally
Weird.
the female reincarnation of Germany Bad Mustache Man, and therefore the game is problematic, and therefore every VTuber who plays it is a pick-me. The whole discourse surrounding it and how this word is used is just so completely unhinged and insane that I almost don't even need to point out the logical problems with or the false dichotomies and bad faith assertions anymore. The inconsistency is just so obvious that it practically refutes itself. And if you don't believe me, try searching for the word pick-me on the internet and how it's used yourself. It seems to always be used against any woman who does anything nice for a man, any woman who sets any kind of standard.
Is it mostly other women? Because this is kind of crazy. I just saw, like, my best friend is a pick-misha. Is that how you say pick-me-isha? Yes? Oh. That's kind of unfortunate. It's mostly used by women. That's really disappointing. I want, like, girlfriends. Like, I do. I want girlfriend women. I don't think there's anything wrong with women. It's just kind of making it hard for this side. I'm just saying. You're making it a little bit difficult. You're like the side to the male incels of the men that are lonely, but not stupid enough to buy into the thing where all women are bad and all women are dog shit and they will never marry me kind of thing. Okay? You're like, it's the same thing, but for women.
Standards for herself whatsoever, or just any girl who just does anything at all that the woke left doesn't approve of. That's probably why the smart move is to do what Pippa did, where she adopted the pick-me label for herself as her government name. I would strongly
Pickle Piper, pick of pickled peppers, pick me Pippa, but that's my government name, based. Oh, that's my Oshi right there.
advise this to any woman who finds herself being called a pick-me. Don't take it seriously. Just laugh and move on. And fortunately, it seems that most VTubers seem to understand this. The haters gonna hate mentality is likely the best move here. And so, what's the real conclusion here? Where am I going with this? And the answer to that is that VTubers have accidentally proven that labels like Manic Pixie Dream Girl and Pick-misha are really just crab mentality, which is the if I can't have it, neither can anyone else mentality.
Yeah, it's grifting. It's the word grifter. People used to call you a grifter when you post the same opinions that you hold opinions that are valid, they are constructive, they're not attacking anyone in particular, you're just breaking down an argument or a debate. And then they think, oh, she doesn't actually believe that because other people agree with her. It's like, what? Okay, like, that doesn't make sense.
It's a very bizarre and toxic psychological phenomenon where people will try to undermine the success of others. Because one thing that's interesting about VTubers is, again, I'm talking about mostly successful VTubers here. A lot of these girls actually make pretty decent money. They don't make as good of money as some people think they do, but for any girl who manages to hit around 100k followers, it can become a pretty stable upper middle class income. And the girls who manage to hit 1 million can also hit the 7-figure
that depends. I wouldn't say that's a marker for success because there's people with 100k that don't stream, but that's besides the point.
Mark in their income as well, which is kind of the bizarre irony of the situation. I've often said the biggest problem with modern feminism isn't so much that it defends women's rights, but rather the problem is it doesn't really defend women's rights. It instead tries to entitle women with rights that have nothing to do with property rights, as a form of weird gender socialism to convince women that they're always the victim.
Third wave feminism has turned into something that does not make it about equality and justice for women, but more about putting other people down or putting women above those people. Yeah, for example, this is a really insane example, but it happens. There is a black disabled veteran, but if you're a white disabled woman, you're still above that person just because they're a male. Like, make that make sense. It's always like some sort of oppression Olympics in that regard, just because you're a woman. You're a woman, you're above them. That makes it automatic. It might be like a war vet that had their legs blown off or something, but because you're a woman, it makes it... Shouldn't the color went out? No, apparently not. Apparently not! It's a crazy mental gymnastics game. It's unfathomable to think like that in real life because to me, it's unironic racism and sexism.
You know, going back to the victim-oppressor dichotomy of the whole neo-Marxist ideology.
That's crazy.
Here they are shaming successful women because some of those successful women are turning against the woke brigade. It really shows just how toxic the ideology is. But perhaps the worst part about this isn't really something to do with VTubers specifically, and instead just manifests as general bad dating advice directed at young women. If I were to look at both the red pill manosphere and compare it to, say, female dating strategy, one could attempt to argue that, they're both equally bad, they're two sides of the same coin. But that's not actually true, because the red pill community at least gives men basic, decent advice, even if it really can be a little bit misogynist at times. For example, when Andrew Tate says that you should lift and that men should be constantly improving themselves, he's correct. Some of the other things he says may be questionable, but the basics of the advice is correct, which is that you need to be constantly striving to be the best version of yourself that you can possibly be, because that way you're focusing on what you have to give, which in turn increases your value in the dating market.
But now the pendulum has swung so far that women who are 3s and 4s can be overweight and still want to have an ideal date of a man that's probably like a 6 or a 7. That is like... That's what I think the problem is, man.
Marketplace, or just makes you a higher value partner in general. And you see that within pretty much all of the red pill community. Constantly improving oneself is always a part of the message. And yet when you look at the advice given to young women in places like female dating strategy, or
you're
pretty
fabulous
much
no matter
any
what
dating advice from a sort of neo-Marxist woke feminist lens, this angle of self-improvement,
I don't think it's exclusively to neo-Marxism. I have a vague understanding that this is like a left-leaning, like third wave feminism combination with intersectionality and all that, but it's not exclusive to that. That's all I can disagree on. Even though I don't have a full understanding, I think it's not exclusive.
Doesn't really exist. Going back to how Ho Maths puts it, it's stuck at stage 3. They're stuck in the mindset of thinking of relationships only in the context of what you can get out of them. And so the self-improvement element is largely missing from their advice. There's a little bit of it, but it's a drop in the bucket in a sea of entitlement. For example, what is a high-value woman? Well, according to them, a queen. And what is a queen? Well, it's a woman who already knows that she's high value. And if that sounds like circular reasoning...
But I'm thinking I'm high value. Wait, hold on. You flip this to, like, being an incel, a male incel specifically, and you being, for example, a 300-pound man who sits on his computer and doesn't have a job, but suddenly because you're a girl, it's fine because you think you're a queen and you deserve it. Yeah, even... I mean, incels... I've seen incel forums, like, on Reddit, unironically saying that, but usually, not always, but usually they get laughed out. They always say, like, yeah, I'm a fat fuck, but, like, I'm fine with being a fat fuck, you know? That's the mentality, and I think that's the male mentality. It's like, I don't really care what other people think of me, but with women, it's mostly, like, validation or self-validation.
Well, because it is. And therefore, the queens deserve high-value men because they just do. And if you're a woman and you dare question that, and you try to think about what you can do to improve yourself, well then, you guessed it, you're a pick-me. Do you question the narrative that all the evil straight white males are in fact a bunch of bastards who only want sex? Well, but you're a pick-me. You being nice...
And women that want big, strong males just want a big provider that can defend them and have a lot of money so that they can buy Gucci and Prada. Yeah. Yeah, I can play that game too.
To men? Nope, can't do that because men just want to sleep
fat
with
wallet.
you. And any lady who questions that is, again, you guessed it, a pick-me. And while they're...
Stop being nice to him. Block that scrote ex-stalker. You know he just wants to sleep with you. Again, this is such weird, like, I agree, if someone is stalking you and they're harassing you after you dump them, you shouldn't talk to them. But it's so vague. Like, what if it's a guy that's interested in you? And you tell them no, and then they keep harassing you? Like, yeah, block them. I don't know, this is very, very, very weird.
Is a little bit of correct advice here. Like, for example, I will never be with a man who cheats on me. It doesn't really matter because that one's kinda obvious. There's nothing in here that teaches young women what they actually need to know, which is how to improve themselves and how to select for men who are actually interested in commitment. Instead, what I see from this ideology seems to start out from the assertion that you are already maximum value, and so ladies are therefore entitled to commitment from men. And depending on whether you are a man or a woman, if you question this, you are either a pick-me or a sexist. And that is not good advice for young women. Unless, of course...
I've had my moments where I really questioned my own gender, okay? Like, I have. I still love women, man. I do. I love men and women. I just hate the extremities of the douchebags of both sides, man. I really do. It makes me despise humanity, but then I remember there's a lot of good noodles. There are. Lots of good noodles.
You're
a lot of them in my chat, even.
That is designed to teach girls how to wake up one day and look in the mirror, discovering that they are 50 years old and still single and never married. Thinking...
No, there's 45, and then they complain that they had kids with a man they didn't want.
That you're entitled to commitment is terrible advice. And if we look at similar subreddits to FDS, by shared user base, we can see that this is exactly what's happening. Dating over 30, dating over 40, child free. This is definitely not the advice that any young lady should be listening to.
And again, you can absolutely have the valid opinion to be child free. There are many people who are child free due to reproductive circumstances. What if they had, like, I don't know, some surgery or something? That's fine. It's when you push other people to do something that they don't want to do. You're stepping over the line of, like, oh, I'm a trad woman and I want to have 4 kids, and then there's someone screaming in your ear saying, no, you have to not have kids. You're killing the planet. It's like, what the hell? Like, what?
And then you look at the red pill community for men, and it's a completely different story. There's plenty of self-improvement here. Seduction, bodybuilding, male fashion advice, fitness, social skills. This is actual proper advice. And the most important...
Hold on. Seduction, purple bill debate, I don't know what that is. MGTOW. Wait, that's the word they used! They used a Reddit word? Ugh, cringe. Bodybuilding, men. Male fashion advice, men. Social justice in action. I don't know what that means. Trestless, I don't know what that means either. Fitness. Fitness is for men and women. Mostly for men, I would say. It's like a men hobby, to be honest. But sure, there are women that engage in it. Men go their own way. Okay, yeah, thank you. I forgot. I keep forgetting what the acronym means. But most of these are mostly based on, like, male, how to say, male-oriented Reddits.
Nice. Fitness. Social skills.
Tressless without hair. Wait, then the majority of these are aimed at mostly men. Like, female pattern baldness is not that common. Yeah, it's way more common in men. Of course, there are women who suffer circumstances or have bad genetics. I understand that, but it's mostly men.
This is actual proper advice. And the most important difference, though, is that you almost never see men tearing each other down for being successful. And yet, it happens all the time in the circles of fake advice given to women. Constantly...
because women compete with each other. I've come to the conclusion, as, like, a former, like, femcel, I understand that it's a form of, like, tearing each other down and trying to compete on like a, how do I say it? On a former, like, evolutionary cell. Former femcel. Well, yeah, I had a job, buddy. I went to school. Incel. Femcells don't exist. Here we go. That's what I'm saying. Like, I thought like that when I was really young and immature. Incel means celibate. I guess I'm lumping neat and incel into the same category. My bad. I meant more like incel neat. Ow, I just dropped something. Yeah, I meant neat. My bad. As a former neat, like female neat that basically didn't go outside and didn't have a job, didn't have like school, I came to the conclusion that a lot of women hate, specifically on successful women, is mostly other women tearing them down. Yeah. It's very, very disheartening to know that, because the camaraderie that men feel with each other is something that most women just cannot comprehend. Yeah. I was always a little bit jealous to some capacity that what men experience in like the army and I guess like jobs and stuff, men bond a lot easier than other women, and they don't feel like they're competing with one another, and there's not like that fake competitor, like you have to really get to know a girl to realize that she wants to be friends with you and she's not just being nice. I think that's just something to do with like evolution or some sort of like innate need to like put other girls down, unless you're like family or something. I don't know. It's hard to explain.
Clawing at each other and ripping each other apart for that one time she did something nice for a boy. It's pretty ridiculous, and it sadly shows that Western society still has yet to fully learn. There's a legendary article called The Misandry Bubble, written by Imran Khan of The Futurist, and one of the most important parts about it that most people kind of gloss over is this section right here. The basic premise of this article is that men and women are equally valuable, but have different strengths and weaknesses and different priorities. Society is strongest when men and women have roles that are complementary to each other rather than of an adversarial nature. Furthermore, when one gender, either one, is mistreated, the other ends up becoming disenfranchised as well. Any society that wishes to sustain itself needs for men and women to get along with each other, or else both parties are going to end up suffering, as the culture of their society becomes more and more toxic. And so when you
weak men create hard times.
See progressive pseudo-intellectuals, under the guise of women's rights, trying to demonize men, and telling women that holding herself to any kind of standard is giving in to some kind of sexist stereotype. Over time, that mentality is doomed to end up harming women just as much as it harms men. And VTubers have gained success by just kind of accidentally breaking out of this mold. They've found a niche market in being fun and entertaining and not hating men. So it's kind of a silly but also very real example of the free market kind of fixing it. But unfortunately, there's still a lot of work to do, and the dating market in general needs to be repaired from the damage that has been caused to it by this neo-Marxist regime. And hopefully
I don't think it's just that. I think a lot of this is social media and validation. If we deleted social media, like if the internet went down for like 30 days, I think there would be a massive improvement in people's mentalities. Like every single person in the world, period, all of the internet shut off, there would be like some chaos for like a brief moment, but I do think that it would correct itself. I'm one of those people that believes that. I think the internet has done a lot of harm. And I'm a person that benefits from it, by the way. I'm just saying. I think that I would take the L so that the world would improve. I would, genuinely. Yeah.
Today I have helped by pointing out just how ridiculous and inconsistent the flawed reasoning that this regime uses really is. Which is important because a lot of these people who believe in this ideology are in fact mainstream corporate journos. And you will see this kind of inconsistent reasoning in mainstream publications. But hopefully you now know how to spot it and not fall for it. And so for now, that is all I have to say. Thanks for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and if you enjoy my content and want to support me, you can do so on either Ko-Fi, Subscribestar, or by buying some merch, or by again checking out Ground News. Because they really do a great job in showing how the same story can be shown in a completely different light from different sources. But yeah, again, for this video, that is it. Till next time.
Yep. That was a good video. I thought it was gonna be a lot more rage baity. Again, my first impression from the thumbnail was like, oh god, this is gonna be some fucking VTubers bad, Fillion is political, let's shit on Fillion, Kirshi's cringe, Pippa's a dumb bitch, something like that, but it wasn't. It was ultimately just philosophical kind of bantering. Yeah, check them out. Mentis Wave, chat. Mentis Wave.